What's going on YouTube? Earth Power here, bringing you another Duel Masters video. Today, I'm going to show you the basics of the two types of cards in the game, creatures and spells. And then after we go over some of the basics that are on the cards, such as the attack, cost, text, and so forth, civilization, all that mess. Once we go over all that, we're going to do a quick little how to play video where I show you the basics, setting mana, tapping said mana to summon creatures, just basically take you through a few turns in the game to get a pretty good understanding of how the game actually works. Alright, so let's begin. This here is a creature. This is Maggers, Visor of Magnetism. He is a light monster, you can tell by the yellow coloring. There are 5 civilizations in this game. Light, which is what we're looking at here. Fire, which is red. Nature, which is green. Water, which is blue. And darkness, which is, well, black or dark, or however politically correct people call it. But here we have a light monster. So, this number here in the top corner, this 4 represents how much mana it's going to actually cost to summon this card, to play this card from your hand to the field. Now, this mana cost here can be made up. All cards in this game can represent mana. And you play mana down in your mana zone, which usually lies below your shields, which we'll get into a little later when we go over the how-to video. This number here represents the cost that this card represents in your mana zone. In America, we only got the 12 sets, and in all 12 sets, every number here is the same for all cards. So every card pretty much represents 1 mana. So here we have the attack. Cards have 1 set attack. Power, I should say. And this one is 3,000. This little ad here is kind of in the way, but this one has a power of 3,000. Almost all the cards in the game range from usually 1,000 to anywhere. I think the highest is 15,000. So there is one card that has a power of 500 and a few that go to a power of 0. But in Duel Masters, if a card has a power of 0, it is destroyed automatically. So, and there are rulings behind that. We might see some of those cards a little later if we get into them. But this is the power of the card, and we'll see how that comes into play a little later in the how-to video. Here, we have the card text, which tells you what this card does when you play it into the battle zone, or monster zone. When this card gets played from the hand, once you tap 4 mana for this card's cost of 4, and you play him into the zone, and this creature says, when you put this creature into the battle zone, draw a card. So you draw 1 card from your deck, and then he stays on the field and does whatever he does next turn. His name is Maggers, Visor of Magnetism, and here, under his name, is his civilization. There are, I want to say, about 40, 50 civilizations. No, there's way more than that. I'm thinking just maybe the 1 civ. There's hundreds of civilizations, and this one's here is Initiate. Initiate is a really popular civilization for light. They use a lot of cards such as Crazed Valkyrie, Sarius, Maggers himself, and a few others. But this here is its civilization. Down here in the bottom right hand corner, we have the set which it comes from. All sets have their own certain little symbol. This is the symbol for Evo Crushionators of Doom, which was the 2nd set. Here, this little circle represents its rarity. Circle is common. Diamond is uncommon. A star equals rare. A star with a circle around it is a super rare. And 4 little blocks with the middle one kind of cutout, it's an interesting little symbol, I'll show it to you later, is very rare, which is the highest rarity in Duel Masters. Down here you have its number from the set, 7 of 55, which is the number that this card lies in the set versus how many cards are actually in that set. Also, to tell whether a card is a creature or a spell, you have the creature or spell written here under the picture itself. Down here, this text is called its flavor text. A lot of cards say stupid, silly stuff. This one's kind of, I don't know, serious for some reason. But usually the flavor text are just kind of like, I don't know what the word to call it would be, I guess icebreakers for the card, since, you know, I guess some people take this game way too seriously. Some of them are pretty funny though, they made me laugh. Alright, moving on. That's your basic creature card right here. You have its cost, its name, its civilization, its text for what it does, what kind of card it actually is, its power, its mana, cost when it's in the mana zone, rarity, set, and set number, and flavor text. Alright, we're going to go to our next card now. This is a spell, your basic spell. The green here represents that it's from the nature civilization. Its cost is 2, so it costs 2 mana to play. But one of the differences between creatures and spells is that when a spell is played from the hand, unlike a creature that would stay on the field, spells go immediately to the graveyard. Now, once the spell has hit your graveyard, it activates, and you activate its effect accordingly. This card's effect is this text right here. We'll get to this in a second, but this is its actually text, where this little box kind of represents, you read on from there. And this card says put the top card of your deck into your mana zone. So much like Magrus, where you would draw a card from your deck, this card would take the top card of your deck and instead of drawing it, put it directly into your mana zone. Now this effect up here is Shield Trigger. We'll see how those work in a how to play video here in a few minutes. But Shield Trigger is basically when a card is broken in your shields, it goes to your hand. Now once the card hits your hand, if it has a Shield Trigger ability, you can then cast the spell from your hand without paying its cost. But that's only when it's broken from the shields. And we'll see how that comes into play a little later. Finally, we have our second type of creature. Still counts as a creature card, but it's a little different. Instead of just being able to play this card directly from the hand to the field, this card has to be evolved from another creature, hence evolution creature. That's very blurry. Evolution creature. So, you would need a card with the same civilization already on your side of the field, another beast folk. This can be Bronze Arm Tribe, Burning Mane, or a few other common beast folk. Once those cards are on the field, you can then tap 2 mana to play this card from your hand and put it on top of your other beast folk card. Once this card's on top of your other card, it basically counts as the creature now. You turn your one beast folk into this beast folk. And he gets certain effects based on just like your other creatures. Usually evolution creatures cost very little and have very high attack. That's one general kind of thing that these guys run by. Here it tells you that it is an evolution, so you can't just play this card from your hand. You have to put it on to one of your beast folk. And we'll also see how that comes into play in the little tutorial video here in a few seconds. You see here the diamond that represents that it's an uncommon. This is also from the same set as Evo Cruciators. Same thing, mana cost of 1. And this symbol here represents the beast folk, or represents the evolution symbol. Any cards with this symbol usually have the symbol appearing somewhere else in the picture itself, means that it's an evolution creature. It's just another way to tell that this card is an evolution creature. Alrighty. So now that we have the basics of the cards, I guess, we can go on to how to play. Alrighty. I've set up a little dueling zone, I guess, so to speak. We have our mana zone here, our monster zone, our shields, our deck, and our graveyard. Both players have all of these things. Now, your shields are what your opponent has to attack with his creatures in order to win the game. Once all 5 of these shields have been broken, the opposing player must make one final attack to the player himself in order to win the duel. So, let's do a quick little run through here. I'm going to go ahead and label these. So that we know what they are as we move on. So go ahead and label the deck here. Alrighty. Okay. The first player to go, well, to begin the duel, both players usually flip a coin or roll a dice to decide who goes first. And then that player who goes first draws their hand of 5 cards, as does the second player, but the person who goes first does not get to draw a card on their first turn. This is one, I guess, one difference between Duel Masters from, I guess, standard Magic, that you don't draw a card on your first turn. Or maybe that is a rule in Magic, I don't really know. But anyways, the first person to go does not draw a card. So, to begin one's turn, you take a look at your hand of 5 cards. Here we have 2 waters, 2 fires, and a dark. Now, you look at your cards, basically, to see if there's anything you can play. Duel Masters has 4 very specific steps. The first thing you do is draw a card, if you can, for the turn. The second thing is to play mana. Now, to play mana, you simply take one of your cards and put it into your mana zone. We're going to put Rickaboo Screwdriver into our mana zone. Once a card is in your mana zone, it's there to stay unless, of course, you activate an effect that could get that card from your mana zone back to your hand. But for now, we'll keep things simple and just play Rickaboo Screwdriver into our mana zone. Now, he represents 1 fire mana in our mana zone. So, let's scroll back out here. These 4 cards are now in our hand. Now, in order to play a card from our hand, we're going to take the card in our mana zone and tap it. So let's move you 90 degrees. Tapping it to play this card, the Deadly Fighter Breakclaw, from our hand to the battle zone. Now we did that by tapping 1 mana, which is Deadly Fighter Breakclaw's attack, or not attack, his cost, to play him to the field. Now that he's on the field, when a monster is summoned to the field, unless it's an evolution creature, that card has Summoning Sickness, which means that card cannot attack your opponent the first turn it's played. The only cards that don't get Summoning Sickness are speed attackers and evolution creatures. So for now, we tapped our 1 mana, played our 1 creature, and now we have to end our turn. And that's the basic setup for a turn. You untap your mana to begin with, if you have any. You draw a card from your deck, if you can. You play a card from your mana zone, or from your hand into your mana zone. You tap cards in your mana zone to summon creatures or cast spells, and then you attack, if possible. Now, since this was the first turn, we could only do a few of those things. So as we get deeper into this duel, I'll show you a full turn of all the things I just mentioned. Now, take note that also those 4 things that I mentioned cannot be done out of order. You cannot play mana, then draw a card, then summon a creature, or you can't summon a creature, then play mana, then draw a card. It has to be draw a card, play mana, play creatures, attack, in that order. Also take note that you can only play 1 card from your hand into your mana zone per turn. You cannot play more than 1 card from your hand into your mana zone per turn. Okay, so that was this guy's. I'll name him Guy 1 using this deck. First turn. So now we'll go to our second guy. And now it's his first turn. Now, since he's the second to go, he is allowed to draw a card. So, he will draw a card from his deck, which he will add to his hand, and now he has 6 cards in his hand. Now, taking a look at his hand, he has nothing he can actually play from his hand this turn. Since he can only play 1 card in mana per turn, and all these cards cost more than 1 mana, he will not be able to play a card this turn. So, we'll simply take a card from his hand, play it into the mana zone, and pass his turn. So now we'll go back to our first player's turn. And now we'll get to see an actual full turn. So, the first thing we do, before anything happens during our turn, at the beginning, we untap all of our cards. So let's bring him back to 0. To untap him. And now that all of our cards are untapped, we'll draw a card. Now, looking at our hand, we'll go ahead and play, since we don't have any water cards in our mana zone yet, we can't play any of these water cards from our hand. So, we'll have to play a water card from our hand into our mana zone in order to play one of our water cards. Now here's another good note. Water cards here, you see how he costs 2. This does not mean that he needs 2 water cards. Only 1 card that you tap for this card's cost needs to be water. So, he's in our hand. And we'll go ahead and play that emerald. So we'll tap our 2 mana. And play this emerald from our hand to the field. Now, like I was telling you, some creatures, when they're played into the battle zone or monster zone, have a certain effect. This emerald's effect says that when you put this creature into the battle zone, you may add a card from your hand to your shields face down. If you do, choose one of your shields and put it into your hand. You cannot use the shield trigger ability of the shield that you pick up. So we'll go ahead and do that. We'll add this card here, Terror Pit, which has a shield trigger ability to destroy one of your opponent's creatures. Could be very useful later. Into our shields. Now, when we put this card into our shields, we'll pick up our new shield, our old shield. So let's go ahead and put him down. Bring this forward. Cover our card. And pretty much whatever the shield was, we're going to add it to our hand. So we'll say that this shield is a Crystal Paladin. So now we have a new card in our hand, and a good shield trigger down on the shield thanks to Emerald's effect. Now, like I was saying earlier, so far we've done 3 of the steps. First we untapped our mana, then we drew a card from our deck, then we played our 1 card for the turn down into mana, and then we summoned a creature and used his ability. So now we're into the attack step. Emerald has Summoning Sickness, but Deadly Fighter Breakhold was summoned last turn, which means he can attack now. And his ability, which really isn't that great, to be honest, says this creature can attack each turn if able. So last turn, since he had Summoning Sickness, he wasn't able to attack. But this turn he can, so he has to. So we'll go ahead and attack one of the opponent's shields. To attack a shield, or a creature, or anything, that creature must be tapped. So we'll go ahead and tap him. This can basically be seen as that creature making an action for the turn. Now that he's made his action, you choose where this attack is going to go. Since there's no monsters to attack, we'll go ahead and break 1 shield. Creatures, when they attack, unless they state otherwise, break 1 shield each when they attack. So Deadly Fighter Breakhold will attack this shield. And we'll go ahead and break that shield. Now, if that shield's broken, this card would come to our hand, and we would look at it. Now this card has a shield trigger ability, which means now that it's come to our hand from the shields, we can cast it immediately with no cost. So we're going to do that. This card is Fairy Life, which says it can put the top card of your deck into your mana zone. So we'll activate that effect by sending this card from our hand, that was taken from the shields, and putting it in our graveyard, and taking the top card of our deck, and putting it in our mana zone. So now that the opponent has attacked with all the cards he can, he is going to end his turn. Now, we'll go to our second player's second turn. First, we untap any mana, if there's any mana tapped. We'll draw a card from our deck. Now, we'll play a card from our hand into the mana zone. Go ahead and play this one. And now, we'll tap mana in order to play a card. I'm choosing to play Sarius, Visor of Magnetism. This card costs 2 mana, has an ability called Blocker, and also says that this creature can attack players, which means it can't break shields or attack the player himself for the game. However, it only costs 2 mana and has 3,000 power. We'll see how Blocker works in a few seconds during the opponent's next turn. For now, though, we'll tap our mana. Our 2 mana in order to play this card, and play this card into our monster zone. And now, since this creature was just played, it has Summoning Sickness, and can't really attack anything, so we'll go ahead and turn the turn over to the opponent. Now the opponent will draw a card. Well, that was actually a mistake. Now see, since I drew my card first, I was not unable to untap my mana. Now, in most games, it's very easy to forget, such as I just did, about untapping mana. Most players will just let you go ahead and untap, but you really are supposed to remember. So, let this be a learning part for you, to remember to always untap your mana. That way there's no dispute. All of our cards are untapped. We've drawn our card for the turn. Now we'll go ahead and play mana. I'll go ahead and play the Spiral Gate into my mana. And now tap 3 cards. I am using a draw program, so I wish I had a better way to show you guys how to do this, but just bear with me. Thanks, guys. We'll tap our 3 mana to play Aqua Hulkus. This card costs 3 mana and says that when I put this creature into the battle zone, I get to draw a card. So I'll go ahead, and since I just played that creature into the battle zone, I will draw my card, which turns out to be another Aqua Hulkus. So now I have 3 monsters on my side of the field. Deadly Fighter Breakclaw, Emerald, and Aqua Hulkus. Since Aqua Hulkus was just played, it has Summoning Sickness. Now, Deadly Fighter Breakclaw has to attack this turn, so I'll go ahead and attack. Tapping it and targeting this shield. Now, when Deadly Fighter Breakclaw attacks, I now have the option to use my Sarius. Sarius has the ability Blocker. And this ability Blocker, most abilities are defined after the actual text itself, in case you're ever confused or wondering what an ability actually does, and this one explains it for us. Blocker states that whenever an opponent's creature attacks, you can tap this creature to stop the attack, then the 2 creatures battle. So we'll do that. Breakclaw is attacking, so Sarius, I'll go ahead and tap it to stop that attack, and now have these 2 creatures battle it out. Now, when 2 creatures battle, you simply compare one's attack power to the other. Now, there's 3 possibilities here. Either the creature you're battling will have less power than the creature that's battled than your creature, and their creature will die. Or go to the graveyard. Death is kind of extreme. Now, if both creatures had 3,000 power, then they would both be destroyed and go to the graveyard. And if my creature had less power than this creature, say he had 5,000 instead of 1,000, my creature would simply be destroyed, but I would have still protected my shield. Regardless, tapping this creature here stops his creature from breaking my shield, and then the battle determines which creature makes it out, if either of them make it out at all. So, since they're battling, we'll compare their attack. Deadly Fighter Breakclaw has an attack of 1,000, while Sarius, Visor of Suppression, has an attack power of 3,000. So when these 2 creatures battle, Sarius' attack is higher than Deadly Fighter Breakclaw's, so Deadly Fighter Breakclaw will go to the graveyard. And my shield will remain unbroken. So Sarius will stay tapped, and Deadly Fighter Breakclaw will go to the graveyard. But now that Sarius is tapped, Emerald now has the option to attack as well. So, we'll go ahead and attack with Emerald. Now that Emerald's tapped, he can choose to either break a shield or attack my Sarius. Now, if Emerald had a higher attack, such as more than 1,000, say 5,000 or 6,000, he could choose to attack my Sarius and destroy Sarius. But, since Sarius has a higher attack than Emerald, it would be silly for Emerald to attack Sarius. So Emerald will simply break another shield. This shield is not a shield trigger. It's a Magris, like we saw earlier. So, I will simply put it into my hand and wait for my opponent to pass the turn. Now that all of his creatures have attacked that can attack, now Aquaholcus has Summoning Sickness and can attack, the opponent is going to end his turn. So now it's our guy 2's turn. We'll start by untapping all of his cards. Then, step 1, he will draw a card from his deck. Step 3, he will take a card from his hand and play it into the mana zone. And step 4, he will play a card from his hand onto the field. Now, I'm going to simply organize my hand a little bit. I'm going to tap 3 mana in order to play this card. Siege Bellicula. Siege Bellicula is an evolution, like we went over earlier, and says that each of your other light creatures in the battle zone has blocker. And it defines what a blocker does again. But, since he's an evolution, I need to put him onto a creature of the correct race, as he is. So he is an evolution, which says put on one of your initiates. Sarius, the Visor of Suppression, is an initiate. So, we will tap our 3 mana in order to play Siege Bellicula. And play this card on top of Sarius. So now Sarius is evolved. I'm going to go ahead and move this monster zone's pile real quick. Now that Sarius is evolved into Siege Bellicula, like I said earlier, creatures that have evolution, or creatures that evolve, and then a special ability called Speed Attacker, which we'll see next turn, don't have Summoning Sickness. So, Siege Bellicula can now attack with no fear. We'll simply switch his position. Okay. I'll go ahead and get rid of the card behind him. Technically that card should stay under him, but since this is draw program, I'll just pretend that it's still under him. Siege Bellicula will attack, and I will choose to attack his tapped Emerald. Now, creatures on the opponent's sides of the field can only be attacked when they're tapped. Siege Bellicula cannot attack Aquaholcus, even if it wanted to, simply because Aquaholcus is not tapped, and therefore immune to being attacked. So, Siege, when it attacks, has the choice of either breaking an opponent's shield or actually attacking an opponent's tapped creature. Those are your 2 options when attacking. So Siege Bellicula has been tapped to attack and will choose to battle Emerald. Now Siege Bellicula has a power of 5,000 and Emerald has an attack of 1,000. So Emerald will be destroyed and go to the graveyard. So now that Siege Bellicula has attacked, and I have no other creatures to attack with, I will end my turn, since attacking is the last thing that I can do during my turn. So now, we'll take one final turn on the opponent's. So, to sum up, to begin our turn, we untap all of our cards. Mana, creatures, everything we have from our previous turn that was tapped. Now that all of our cards are untapped, we'll draw one card from our deck. Once the card from our deck has been drawn, we'll simply play one of these cards from our hand into our mana zone. Now also take note that these steps can be skipped. You don't have to play a card from your hand into your mana zone every turn. You can simply go from drawing a card from your deck to your attack phase. But once you're finished attacking, you cannot then decide to put a card from your hand into your mana zone. The steps can be skipped, but the steps cannot be rearranged. So, we drew a card from our deck, which is Pyrofighter Magnus. We'll go ahead and play one card from our hand into our mana zone for the turn. Now, we'll tap our mana. Oopsie. Becoming a much longer process, which is why I'm going to end this game on this turn. Tapping 4 mana to play the card Crystal Paladin from our hand to the field. Now, Crystal Paladin is an evolution of a liquid person, which is what Aquahocus was. So we'll put Crystal Paladin on top of Aquahocus. Crystal Paladin's ability says that when you put this creature into the battle zone, return all creatures in the battle zone that have blocker to their owner's hand. Now, Siege Caligula, even though it gives other like creatures blocker, it doesn't actually have blocker itself, so it doesn't get returned to the hand. So now that Crystal Paladin has been played onto the field, we'll simply go ahead and attack with it, since it doesn't have summoning sickness. And we attack the creatures by tapping them. And once Crystal Paladin has been tapped to attack, Crystal Paladin can now either choose to battle Siege or break a shield. For game's sake, we'll say that it's going to attack Siege. So now, the Crystal Paladin has chosen to battle Siege. We compare their attacks, which are both 5,000, and since both creatures have equal attack, they are both destroyed. Go to the graveyard. Due to that battle, since they both had equal attack, Paladin will send Siege to the graveyard as well. And that's pretty much Duel Masters in a nutshell. Now, say that this battle had gone on for a little while longer, more creatures had been summoned, and more shields had been broken. Once all of these shields had been broken, due to 5 attacks or so, once the opponent has no shields, if a creature on the opponent's side of the battlefield would attack you again, as if it were attacking a shield, that person would win the game. Now, of course, you have blockers, such as what Sarius did earlier, in order to stop attacks, but if that attack wasn't able to be stopped and that creature attacked through when I had no shields, this person would win the game. Other ways to win the game are also decking out. If you run out of cards in your deck and you can't draw a card at the beginning of your turn, you also lose the game. And that's pretty much Duel Masters, guys. If you guys have any questions or any ideas, if I maybe missed something or maybe need to clear something up, leave a comment in the video. I know this was a really, really long video, so if you stuck with me all the way through, um, thanks, guys. Thanks for sticking around the whole way through and listening to me ramble on about how to play the basics of Duel Masters. Um, just as a quick note, I think this is going to be my only how to play video. I may, if you guys maybe need something cleared up, or like if there's a tactic or something that I maybe missed, I'm pretty sure I got all the very basics. But if there's something you guys want to know or have any questions about, go ahead and leave me a comment. And if I need to make a second how to play video, well, maybe just clearing a few things up, then I will. But I think this is going to be my only one just because of how long it takes, and I really don't have a program to run Duel Masters here on my computer. So, but things to look forward to in the future. Things are going to be a little easier to talk about. I'm going to be doing a few deck profiles. Um, I think I'm going to start. I might actually do one tomorrow. I'm thinking about doing a rush deck, just to give you guys the basics on one of the simplest decks in the game and easiest to use. We're going to start light on the decks, and then as we get more and more into it, I'll give you some more complicated strategies, some more complicated decks, and then, like I've said before in the update, when I can get together with everybody and make some actual dueling videos, I'll be able to put up like a strategy section where I'll go over a certain card strategy or a certain deck strategy, and then I'll post up a video of that deck being used so you can kind of get like the full picture of it, get the idea behind the strategy, and then actually see it in action. And other than deck profiles and strategy ideas, I'm gonna do single card discussions. So if you guys have any cards in particular that you really like, or just anything you want to hear about, or any ideas that you have in general, shoot them my way, and I might feature it in a video. But yeah, single card discussions, such as like staple cards and underused cards and stuff like that. And again, I really want to get together a question and answer segment. The more questions I can get from you guys, the more I can ramble on about said questions and really go as in-depth as you guys allow me to. And that's pretty much it for now. If you're still sticking around, I thank you greatly. You know I love you guys, so hopefully I will see you next time. Peace.